everybody, great to be here today. I'm glad to see everybody here, and my name is Matt Waters. I am the lease accounting guy, is what most people around here call me. But I've worked in lease accounting for a long time now. I started back in 2005. I took a job at a company, it was actually local here in Atlanta, finance office at American Tower. It was a big cell phone tower company. And they said, Matt, I was living in Birmingham and moving over here. So they said, Matt, don't come to Atlanta for your first day of work. We're going to fly you to Boston. And when you get there, ask for the manager of lease administration. And so I get there. They set me up in an office, and there's a stack of leases this tall and on this desk. And they said, okay, figure out if these are capital or operating. And so I sat there all week, working through these leases. A lot of them were land leases, so I was really just looking for a bargain purchase option or some kind of transfer of ownership, and just worked that spreadsheet all week. And ever since then, I've been involved in lease accounting. I led the lease accounting department at the Home Depot for a number of years, worked there for 6 years total. And Khalil, who you were introduced to earlier today, who's now leading our Center of Excellence, he worked with me there and carried on the tradition of lease accounting at Home Depot, if you will. But now we're really pleased to have Khalil on our team. And but now, for the past about 4 years now, I've been helping you guys and really a total of hundreds of companies reach compliance with ASC 842 and IFRS 16. So really have enjoyed that process. And also presenting with me today is Dan Gallenkamp. And Dan's the Vice President of the Product Group. I've worked really closely with Dan over the past several years as we've both created lease accounting functionality in CoStar for the new standards, dialed it in, getting feedback from many of you guys. And now we're confident we have the best product in the marketplace for lease accounting. And a lot of that is due to Dan's work and his team, Patrick and Jason and many others. I'll forget names if I try to name all of them, but great job by Dan's team getting that product up to speed. So today we're just going to talk about what's next for lease accounting, and I think really the overarching theme here is that it's not just a one-time compliance event. It really, as you know, it happens every month, right? We have month-end close, we have quarter-end close, year-end close, and each one of these events requires some specific lease accounting data to take place and change hands between CoStar and the ERP system, ultimately into your disclosure reports, your annual report, and it's an ongoing process. The predecessor to our current standard, we all remember it as FAS 13, then it became known as ASC 840. Now that was around since 1977, and we've been doing lease accounting for a long time. CoStar and Virtual Premise was involved in that for many years, and so it's ongoing. A lot of the attention recently has been focused on the compliance efforts and cutting over to the new standard, but it is ongoing. We're going to show you a few tools today that we've released really recently to help you with the ongoing compliance and some things just really to make your life easier. So what's happening with lease accounting? ASC 842 is the U.S. standard issued by FASB. Most people in here are familiar with that, and I'd say almost everybody has to comply with that. Some have IFRS 16 as well, but some companies that are on our platform now are private companies. And you'll hear, we've got one on our panel later this afternoon. You'll hear from a private company or a non-public company. And so what's happening right now with private companies is that they are getting a deferral. They're getting an extra year to comply. How many people wish you had had an extra year to comply? I know many people. But basically, FASB learned some lessons along with the rest of us with the initial wave of public companies. And they decided to go ahead and give the non-public companies an extra year. Now, right now, that is a tentative decision, but FASB is meeting, I believe, right this minute. They're meeting and expected to issue the final to vote on this today. I was in Denver yesterday at a Deloitte roundtable about lease accounting, and experts at Deloitte basically all agree that that FASB is going to make this final. They said it'd be too much of a, I guess, a practical joke to tell non-public companies you're going to have an extra year for 6 months and then pull the carpet back out from under them. So we think that's going to be finalized today. Now, another thing that's coming up, and to really, first I'll explain why I'm going to tell you about this, because we're going to talk about Gatsby 87, and I know you guys don't have to comply with Gatsby 87. Just looking around the room and the folks that I know are joining us, I don't think anybody is really that worried about Gatsby. But why do I put this? We're almost at Halloween here, and then after that will be Thanksgiving, right? And some of you know that my brother is an auditor. He's a Big Four auditor. His wife is a CPA as well. She's the head of SEC reporting at a large company. And so we got Thanksgiving coming up. And maybe like me, many of you have some relatives, they work in accounting. Now, I should say our family discussions at Thanksgiving are terribly exciting, right? But some of you may have some relatives that you see at Thanksgiving that they work for a city or a municipality or some of these other organizations listed here, public utilities, hospitals, even colleges and universities. If they're part of the state system, they are going to have to comply with Gatsby 87. So who knows? Somebody might ask you, "Hey, I work for the University of fill in the blank. I just heard about lease accounting," and then you'll have plenty to share with them, I'm sure, from your experiences, and of course mention to them that CoStar can help them as well. Compliance has been a big word that's been thrown around, but unfortunately, for companies, some companies in the marketplace, they've undergone a failed compliance effort, and we've started to see that come into across our desks as companies are reaching back out to CoStar in many cases. Maybe we were involved in an RFP process, and they selected another software. Who knows why? Maybe on the basis of a big discount that they got or something like that. But now we're seeing Big Four, our alliance partners with the Big Four accounting firms are saying that as much as 25% of projects are failing. So we all want to avoid that, of course. At CoStar, we have not had any failures, any projects fail, and now we're even replacing some of these old systems, or the systems that made promises that they couldn't deliver on. So bring that up just to say that it is happening. You may hear some of your peers out in the marketplace talk about projects that aren't going so well. We're certainly hearing that, and also just to say, hey, we're happy that you're with us, and we're definitely committed to your success. If you do, I think as you heard from Robin when she introduced Mark as the new VP of customer success, I mean we're deeply committed to that. So please talk to any of us at any time. We're committed to make sure everybody here is successful. What's happening now is that day two, as I mentioned in the introduction, day two is really taking center stage. And really this month-end close process, things that occur all the time, like renewals, terminations, even partial terminations. We have very specific guidance in ASC 842 about a partial termination situation. These new right-of-use assets that we've put on the balance sheets, they're subject to impairment testing. And so that can be a event that requires a remeasurement. You have changing assessments around what's reasonably certain. You have CPI increases. It really applies in the routine remeasurements. That applies more to IFRS than ASC 842. But if something else changes in ASC 842 and you've had a CPI adjustment, you need to remeasure for that as well. Data corrections, lease modifications, really the list could go on. And we've seen just dozens and dozens of scenarios that we've really put CoStar, our product, through the paces. And even all of these things that I just mentioned, all of them can happen retrospectively too, right? So, and of course, many of you guys, I'm sure, get perfect information exactly on time every month, right? No, I mean, the reality is many times our business partners out in other areas, not in accounting, they're going about their day-to-day activities. They don't think about month-end close. And then we find out about it the next month or maybe 2 months down the road. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we signed this amendment or we exercised this option. And so these remeasurement events have to take place retrospectively as well sometimes. So I'm going to show you a few, not a demo today in the time that we have, but I'm going to show you a few screenshots that I think will be encouraging in that regard. So here I'm going to give you a few items that we've released in the past 6 months or so, and I think these are just things that you will have seen in the release notes. But I've talked with several clients here recently. I get on calls pretty frequently with you guys and your peers across the country, and sometimes people don't see the release notes, and some have been surprised, and I say pleasantly surprised about some of these new things that have been released by the product team. So I'm going to highlight a few of those today. They include the remeasurements that we just talked about and retro remeasurements, the in-schedule journal entry preview functionality, the in-schedule JE unapprove, unexport functionality, and then the view historic schedule functionality. So all super cool things that have been released, and they're all just really helping to make you guys' lives a little smoother. So first I'll highlight the remeasurements and retro remeasurements. So when you get into one of those situations like a renewal or even an impairment, a termination event, you have the option in the amortization schedule to click and remeasure the schedule. So you see that highlighted in the top left corner there. You hit remeasure, and then you have several options to choose from. And ASCA 42 was very specific in how you have to remeasure schedules. So that's why you have several options here, because it's not always the same exact math that needs to take place behind the scenes. So you can do this renewal, data correction, all of the items that we talked about, even partial termination. And once you do that, you basically go into the calculation screen where you enter your dates, maybe you modify the charges that are included, things like that. And if you select a date that has already been posted from a journal entry standpoint, so let's say you've already closed June's books, you find out from your business partner out in the field that something happened in May that's material, you need a remeasurement going back to May. You set those dates, and CoStar will automatically make that a retrospective adjustment. And so then when you go back to the amortization schedule, which is shown in this kind of gray section here, you'll get the figure with a kind of a hyperlink. It's a red text hyperlink, and all the periods, all the lines that represent months that are impacted show adjusted, and one of them will have the impact, and it's a red link. When you click on it, you actually get the details for that retrospective adjustment, and these details are the true-up entry. So that's really the neat part about this, is it doesn't give you a total adjustment here, because part of these the accounts that you're impacting, part of the impact has already been booked because you were already rolling through an amortization schedule. What you get here with the retrospective adjustment details is the true-up entry, and that's exactly what's going to be posted through to your GL as an adjustment. So really neat, practical functionality there that I think will save a lot of time, and frankly, it's used more often than we would like. Yes. The next one, I think this is even newer functionality. Dan's team, I know Jason or JT, as we call him, worked really hard on this. And so this is an in-schedule JE preview and unapproved unexport at the schedule level. So what this does, used to be, as you're probably going through the testing, for those that are live with ASC 842, you're going through testing, you would have to approve the schedule and then go out and in a separate area of the system, approve a batch of journal entries, then export it, and then download to Excel, look at the journal entries to make sure that everything ties out. Now we can do that right here at the schedule level. You just click here in the JE status. This, again, this grayed out kind of section behind the main screen here is an amortization table, and you click the JE status. So it'll say scheduled usually. You click that and it will pull up a mock-up of your journal entry. And what that is, it uses your JE profile that you've entered. It each of these amortization schedules has a JE profile associated with it that you've selected. It'll pull from that schedule the debits and credits involved and produce this preview. And you can see there's a green check mark up in the top left, and that means it's balanced. Debits and credits equal. If it's not, you'll get the red X and it'll say unbalanced. And it's quite unnerving, but it's helpful. So you can actually approve it right there. Now, typically that's not going to be the process. Typically you're going to approve in batches, but it could be quite useful if you just had one that was off a little bit, and you went because you can also unapprove and unexport in this screen too. So if you find one in your overall review and month end that you need to make a correction, just on one lease, this schedule preview, JE preview, in schedule, unapproved, unexport can be quite useful. Now this is another one that we had a lot of requests for. So this is maybe a before the voice of the customer initiative. This is us listening to the voice of the customer, right? A lot of you guys said, hey, we need to be able to see our historic schedules. Our auditors come in, we can see what we have right now from an amortization schedule perspective, but we need to be able to see everything back to the very beginning. And so what you had before was just a line that said that a schedule existed, and you either had to go back and have that saved somewhere, or contact our customer support team and get them to pull it for you. Now you can see where the red arrow is pointed here. You can see that you can actually view a historic schedule. So this is great functionality. Really for audit, I think is the main place this will come into play. But anytime you want to verify, okay, exactly what has happened here, even though we've remeasured, let me see back to adoption of ASC 842 what we had, or back to the first day of this lease. If it's a new lease, we want to see where we are on that. You may not have heard from your tax department already about lease accounting, or you may have, but we're starting to hear some requests come through from many clients and their tax department. So I wanted to highlight this today. Something that that'll surely, if they haven't started working on it now, they'll be working on it really soon for year end for tax. And what's happened here is that ASC 842 has created some new balance sheet accounts. You're now amortizing right of use asset that you never had before, lease liabilities that you never had before. So the tax accountants now have some differences they have to track, book tax differences, some deferred tax assets and liabilities that they're tracking. So while CoStar is not planning to release a tax accounting engine, we're not going to produce a tax return for you, because that gets into a lot of areas that we don't want to track, frankly. And there are many things, industry specific, okay, case law specific, and companies take tax positions that could differ. You may have people in this room that have different tax positions that your teams are taking. And so we want to basically facilitate that in the way that your tax department, your tax team, or your tax consultants, in a way that's beneficial for them. And so what we're working to provide is basically all the data points. So the dates, the lease payments, the lease events that occur, the gap classification, the balances associated with the books, so the gap balances associated with leases, and the expenses that are booked. And so we want to provide that in a meaningful format for your tax team, and then allow them to plug that into their calculations to make this as seamless as possible. And actually, an exciting bit of news here lately, we've been working with both Deloitte and PwC. Of course, they have consulting practices around tax, and they've been working closely with CoStar and our product team to define what's the most meaningful information and how to organize that for tax compliance. And so we'll be excited to share that with you soon. Month-end close and audit. So this is, of course, a topic near and dear to all of us. We want to have accurate month-end close. We want to avoid the situation like the young man here in the picture throwing all his papers up in the air. And so we've got a couple initiatives working here. We've got some key reports, some cutoff process instructions that our team is working on, because we realize that CoStar is it's a continuous flow of information, right? We don't actually cut off and save a whole copy of CoStar's database every month. So we're working with our accountants that are actually, I don't know if it's right to say they're embedded on the product team, but we've got accounting experts on the product team. They're working on providing reports and best practices for that. So stay tuned on that as well. We've also got integrations with Blackline, TrendTech, and others to automate reconciliation processes, and also matching functionality, which is a big feature of softwares like Blackline. And so this matching functionality can be really useful. For example, if you have a large equipment portfolio and you have AP process associated with that, and you're wanting to match your payments with the payments that are reflected in CoStar, you can use these tools for that. And another thing, just to mention, just a heads up, Audit. It's coming for this year, and we've seen so far some of the Big Four are taking a little more aggressive stances than others, and I'd say being a little more nitpicky. But anyway, it's coming for everybody, so be ready. And actually, our reports that have been generated in CoStar, we put a lot of thought into those, especially disclosure report. You can run the disclosure report with the supporting details included. And so just make sure you check that checkbox when you run your disclosure report, and you'll get lease level, line-by-line details for everything that rolls up to that disclosure report. And as you know, with weighted average, lease terms, weighted average discount rates, it can get complex really fast. And we've done the heavy lifting on that for you, and you should just be able to print that out, give the supporting details to your auditors, and they can tie it back. This is just a slide to talk a little bit more visually about the integrations with TrendTech and Blackline. You have different flows of information. You have the JE flow through the GL. You also have some AP or sometimes AR information flowing through, and just something to think about as we're I go to a lot of accounting conferences, and big buzzwords now are automation, right? API, robotics. You hear these terms thrown around just so much these days. Continuous close, which kind of sounds ominous, but it really means you've gone from maybe a 10-day close to a 5-day close to a 3-day close to now a lot of companies have integrations and systems set up, so you're kind of continuously closing the books. You can run a report at any time and see where you're going to be for that month. So integrating with these innovative companies like Blackline, TrendTech, is really a great way. They were able to help you with that. And now let me turn it over to Dan Gallenkamp, and he'll talk a little more about what's upcoming.
Yeah, I'm Dan Gallenkamp. I run the product group here at CoStar Real Estate Manager. I have been here for a while. I have met many of you, and for those of you I haven't yet, it's nice to meet you. So I am here to talk a little bit about what is next for the accounting product, where we are headed, what are some of the tools that we're working on. A lot of it, most of it, ties directly into what Matt's just spent a while talking about. So day 2 has become a big thing for us, and day 2 is going to cause us to, cause our backlog to fill up with a bunch of neat additions to the product that we're very excited about working on. One of the first things you'll see coming out in November is a series of changes around the journal entry processing screen. So those of you who do process journal entries, hopefully in the last month or so, you've actually seen some feedback windows popping up in that. So one of the things that we've been working on is actually embedding questionnaires within the application so that we can get feedback from you guys more easily and have you guys start to provide just enhancement requests or thoughts on the product. With that one, we had a really decent response rate. So most of the people who actually saw the feedback loop provided either the page is working great or here are some things that we'd like to change about the page. And so some of those features are what we're taking and putting into place. So things like improving the filtering process on it, previewing your journal entries from before you actually approve them in mass, speed improvements, and more flexibility in the ability to display data. And so a lot of that, the actual functionality of exporting the journal entries is not changing, but how you go in and look at your journal entries and process them is just becoming easier, faster, and more applicable based on the actual usage that we're seeing in the system. And that generally is a trend that we're working to, take into account every time we go through and look at the product these days. One of the other changes you'll see in the system, the report updates. So as Matt said, obviously the disclosure report, it is working great right now. It does a lot of things. It processes a lot of data for you guys, does a lot of the heavy lifting, as he said, but there's more data that people have asked to be displayed in that report. So it can be as simple as things like, displaying the hierarchy value on the raw data tab. That's an oddly highly requested feature that we didn't expect back at the beginning. And there's a number of other just additional data points that we want to display in the system. But then there's also features like that we're working on to allow users who have multiple fiscal calendars to be able to run one disclosure report across those different calendars. Doesn't apply to a lot of clients, but the clients that it does apply to, it's a very important feature that we're adding in to meet their needs. And so we're pretty excited about that. Speed is another thing. All of those reports, the forecast, the summary, the forecast report particularly, but the summary and disclosure reports as well. We're looking to make some improvements to the underlying architecture and the servers that actually produce those reports, and make those reports actually display more quickly within the system and get you that data without having to wait during the processing time and have them emailed to you. Excuse me. Another report that we're adding to the system that's been pretty heavily requested is a roll forward report. So there's a number of you out there who have been working with us on a beta version of the roll forward report and a process that has been using an Excel template. And so we're taking that and incorporating that into the system and building that out. So we're looking at releasing those in November, December timeframe. Obviously, once we hit December, we're going to put a freeze on some of the code releases because we don't want to get into releasing code, changing reports, anything like that as we get towards year end. But so you'll see those changes up until the end of the year. And then starting next year, we get into some bigger changes around calendars. So we've had a lot of requests around consolidating calendars for clients who have multiple portfolios that share the same calendar. So whether that's equipment leases and real estate leases have a single calendar that is not a standard, January to December calendar, the ability to share that across those, the ability to shift the year end, different types of functional pieces like that. And then also an improved accounting dashboard. So this is a process or an improvement to the dashboard to, one, consolidate the administration tools so that you're not having to go to the admin module and the accounting page and the portfolio homepage, but actually consolidating all of those features into one place, upgrading the interface around those pages, and then providing you with a faster way to get to all the different details about your portfolios all in a central place. And then a month-end dashboard functionality as well to help you track through where you are in the closeout process. And then as well, things like we have the health check page on the dashboard. We're actually going to start displaying some of that health check information and allow you to check off some of the health check features to say this is not important to me or this has already been taken care of. And all of those different pieces of functionality, we're actually working with Khalil in the Center of Excellence for the accounting product to go through and organize that. So any of that type of feedback that you guys provide to that Center of Excellence ends up going back to us in the end and gets prioritized along with everything else. And then we determine, where does this fall on the list based on, number of requests, how broadly applicable it is, how impactful it is to clients, things like that. So you'll see a number of those changes coming in, and you'll hear about some of them in some of what we talk about in the accounting COE webinars and other discussions that we have. So, as Matt talked about as well, we do have some larger features in the pipeline. So changes specifically for the Gatsby reporting needs. So there are some nuances to Gatsby and what people who report in Gatsby need to see and how they need to track the system. So most of that is handled in the system today, but there are, as I said, there are some nuances to that we'll be adding in. As well, some of the tax reporting functionality that Matt talked about, that's something that, obviously is becoming more and more critical. Beyond that, equipment leasing and the equipment leasing functionality, so things like buy versus lease calculation engines, fleet integrations, bulk remeasurement tools, and bulk remeasurements not just obviously for equipment, but it's more applicable there, but the ability to go in and say, I want to take a whole tranche of leases and go remeasure them at one time. Those type of features you'll see coming out in the beginning to middle of 2020. That's stuff that, not critically important to the actual, calculations and numbers, but things that make your lives easier, improve the processes, and then further expand the usefulness of Real Estate Manager to you guys. Another feature, FX gain loss, that's one that currently a lot of the ERP systems are handling the FX gain losses, but we've seen a lot of requests coming in recently around moving that back up into Real Estate Manager so that that's handled by us and then just passed on to the ERP systems. Obviously there's things beyond that that are not specifically tied to accounting that you're going to see. So we are working on some pretty dramatic improvements to the user interface of the application overall, going and doing a bunch of redesigns on how the system looks, how it feels, making it more responsive to different screen sizes, things of that nature, tying in more deeply, as Andy alluded to, with the CoStar application, reflecting some of the user interface that they have up there. Or in that application, which are all really positive things for us and for you guys. Internationalization, we're working to add some features around, just improving the utility of some of the screens and some of the display values for people who aren't, U.S. based. So, displaying currencies and, in your local currency, things like that. And yes, I'm hurried, Kelly, sorry. And the other thing you will see a lot more of are in-app announcements, in-app training, so walkthroughs of key pages, We've had some requests for, yeah, the support center is great and the release notes are good, but what I'd really like to see is actually on a page, going back to exactly the question we just had, how do I know that this new feature is there? Well, now we're going to start putting pop-ups actually on pages that say, here's the journal entry preview button. Go click here to go walk through and do that. And so you'll see more of that, and then more, hopefully you've all seen the announcements of product releases within the app as well. So that's a whole new set of functionality we're adding in just to make sure everybody's aware of the changes, because obviously making changes to an application that handles your accounting is pretty important to make sure you guys know about that. So I'm wrapping up right now. Just my pitch is, we relish your guys' feedback. We really do. We appreciate everything you guys have to say to us, whether it's, hey, here's a way that the app could be a little bit better, or hey, I hate this feature and I really wish you'd change it. All that stuff is good stuff. And, please do not ever hesitate to reach out to us and tell us how we could make the application a little bit better for you. You can reach out directly to us or through the support portal or the Center of Excellence. All those ways will end up, on my desk in a list of things that I review regularly, and it is actually what makes us change the application and improve it for you guys. So.